Landmark, Chair of Board of Director, Greenstad, Norway. Your session will be moderated by Mr. Pavan Mulukutla, Director, Integrated Transport, Electric Mobility and Hydrogen, WRI-India. Now I would request Mr. Anurag Nalapaneni, Senior Program Associate, Hydrogen, WRI-India, to give us a background note for this webinar, and it will be followed by a short presentation from Mr. Soham Shirsagar, Program Associate, Hydrogen, WRI-India. Over to you now, Anurag. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anandita, for the introduction, and welcome to all the panelists and audience to the webinar on understanding global hydrogen strategies. The time is ripe to tap into hydrogen's potential contribution for a sustainable transition. A growing number of countries are announcing targets to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions over the next couple of decades. Achieving these targets will require immediate action to turn the 2020s into a decade of a massive clean energy expansion. Along with renewable energy, hydrogen will need to play an important role in the transition to net zero. Hydrogen can be used in many more applications than those common today. Although this still accounts for a very small share of the total hydrogen demand, recent progress to expand its reach to other applications has been strong. Hydrogen is a key pillar for decarbonization of industry, although most technologies that can make this transition possible are in the nascent stages. Major steps are being taken over the past couple of years. We have witnessed the first production of low carbon steel from Sweden. Pilot project deployment for green ammonia production have seen deployment across various parts of the globe. And many demonstration projects for using hydrogen in industrial applications such as cement, ceramic, glass manufacturing, transport are underway. Since the first hydrogen energy ministerial meeting in Japan in 2018, the momentum has grown and an increasing number of governments and companies are establishing visions, plans for enabling hydrogen. As on date, over 30 countries have announced their strategies, roadmaps, or policies for adoption and transition to low carbon hydrogen. The focus of most government policies on producing low carbon hydrogen through mechanisms which can increase demand, scale manufacturing, and reduce costs are all being tested out by these nations through various direct and indirect interventions. But boosting the role of low carbon hydrogen in clean energy transitions require a step change in demand creation. Nations across the world are starting to announce a wide variety of policy instruments, including carbon taxes, carbon pricing, auctions, quotas, mandates, and requirements in public procurement. Most of these measures are yet to enter into force. Their quick and widespread enactment through decisive and robust legislation could unlock future potential to scale low carbon hydrogen demand. Through this webinar, we hope to demystify and understand the approach of some of the leading nations across the world spearheading the transition to low carbon hydrogen. I would once again like to thank our esteemed panelists, audience, and colleagues for their support and participation. I look forward to enriching and insightful discussions from the distinguished panelists. With that brief background, I'd like to now hand over to my colleague Soham, who will be giving a brief presentation on the status of various national hydrogen strategies across the globe. Thank you. Over to you, Soham.
Thank you, Anurag. I'll just share my screen, just confirm once. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, it is now.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Anandita and Anurag, for the welcome remarks. We're delighted to have our attendees and panelists on board, and we look forward to discussing the topic of understanding global national hydrogen strategies. WRI-India hereby would like to give us a small context-setting presentation whereby the topics discussed in the presentation can be transferred over to the panelists to have a further discussion upon. We have representation currently from the EU, Norway, Australia, Japan, and India for the same, and we look forward to discussing their strategies and further implementation ideas. In terms of hydrogen's acknowledgement as a global cross-sectoral clean energy vector, more than 15 countries have announced their national hydrogen strategies. As seen in the map, it can be seen that Japan has set the precedence for the strategy announcement back in 2017. Since then, there was a rise of interest for hydrogen in the Asia-Pacific region, with Australia and South Korea announcing their strategies in 2019. And since then, there's been a major increase in launch of hydrogen strategies globally, as seen in the map. As you can see, in 2020, almost every continent had some sort of a strategy announcement. So currently, more than 15 countries have announced a strategy, with another set of 15 countries having announced a policy roadmap, hydrogen program, or a policy support document in support of hydrogen deployment and projects across the world. Although there are multifaceted reasons for a lot of countries in announcing their strategies, there are two critical reasons or drivers due to which these strategy announcements have taken a sharp turn in the recent years. So the first one being the cross-sectoral ability of hydrogen to decarbonize, which is multifaceted in nature, starting from industries to mobility to energy storage. Within industries, you have refining, you have chemical and feedstock, you have iron and steel. Within mobility, then you have maritime, aviation, trucks and buses and cars as well. So given its nature and its ability to decarbonize, given its physical and chemical properties, the first reason being the cross-sectoral decarbonization has been one of the key reasons why countries are adopting these strategies. With the second one being its ability to act as an energy security and a long-term energy security vector. As you can see in the map, there's a lot of countries have announced several different things, but the important ones being the electrolyzer capacity targets, the export targets, the hydrogen production targets, and some of the financial outlays which the countries have announced. What we have really observed through our analysis is that some countries still have strategies in discussion, as seen on the table, with the ones in yellow. The ones in the red are the ones where there is a roadmap present. The ones in the green are the ones where the strategy is present, and the ones in the blue are the ones there is strategy present, which is embodied into a legislative commitment as well. What we have observed is the countries who have embodied their strategic commitments alongside a legislative framework or a regulatory framework have been the most successful in implementing their strategies on ground. One of the most finest examples of this is South Korea's hydrogen law, which was enacted back in 2021, which ensured that the strategic commitments made within the document doesn't just stay on paper, but actually do have some implications on and some application on ground. So we believe that the countries who are currently in the phase of drafting their strategies or are at the end moments of the strategy announcement should definitely consider aligning their strategic commitments with legislative framework, so that the deployment of hydrogen across sectors could be sped up. One of the common trends which we have observed alongside most of the strategies is the color code transition, or the much debated color conundrum of hydrogen. As we can see in the figure, it is apparent that some countries like Germany, Portugal, India, and France and Chile are looking towards a direct transition to green hydrogen. The important reason being it's the availability of land and the RA potential these countries carry, while some countries still look at blue and brown hydrogen with carbon capture technologies to meet their growing hydrogen demand. Although the common trend observed is the following, the final output of all the countries in terms of the color focus these countries carry is going to be green hydrogen, which is a very great sign to have. We have observed some sectoral trends as well. Like, for example, if you see the sectoral trends, the focus from a policy and investment focus from a sectoral perspective can either be absent, aggressive, long-term, or slow. If neatly observed, it can be seen that within the transport sector, most of the countries have a aggressive policy and investment focus for trucks and buses or heavy-duty side of the transport, with some countries having a similar sort of trend for industries, mostly iron and steel and refining and chemical feedstock as well. This only one exception would be Japan and South Korea, where the focus from a sectoral perspective is more for mobility, as seen in the table, not much for industries. But we are seeing a growing number of countries adopting hydrogen across sectors, which is a great sign to have. Some of the factors which are affecting the split between sectoral preferences are RE integration, the cost and ease of adoption of low carbon or green hydrogen with the existing fossil-based hydrogen, and the sectoral decarbonization targets each of these countries carry. As every country has set of different decarbonization agendas for each of the sectors. Depending on that, the sectoral focus split has been varied. Alongside that, a similar split can be seen, a similar trend can be seen for value chain focus as well, which runs down from hydrogen production, supply, transport, storage, domestic application, component manufacturing, and research and development. The trend which we have observed is the countries who are more, the strategic direction for countries where R&D is given a big support of the countries where research and development is a big component of a strategy of their hydrogen strategies are the ones who are kind of currently leading the hydrogen value chain deployment from production through to the end use. So we believe that research and development and component manufacturing will be key drivers in for countries to develop their value chain more resiliently and more cost effectively in coming years. Alongside that, we have identified a trend for import and export of hydrogen as well. The countries can further be bucketed into net exporters, net importers, and self-reliant countries. What we have observed is most of the Europe and Japan and South Korea will lie into the net importer category for coming years due to their stringent climate decarbonization goals and very ambitious climate plans. Given the ambitious climate plans, the hydrogen requirement within these countries is set to go up significantly in coming years, making them import most of their hydrogen needs. While some countries like Australia, Chile, Australia, Chile, UAE, and Saudi are in a good place to export most of their hydrogen, given less domestic demand but more profitable export market. Some of the factors again driving this demand are domestic demand for green hydrogen and economic viability to export rather than domestically utilize the same. Given the cross-sectoral and global nature of hydrogen's applications, there are a lot of bilateral agreements currently taking place across almost all the countries who have a strategy or a roadmap present. These bilateral partnerships are extremely critical to ensure cost competitiveness and technology readability in coming years. We have identified 4 key buckets in which the countries are currently looking to explore partnerships and agreements in, which is research and development, technology transfer, and demonstrations as seen in the figure. Almost all of the countries are looking towards developing their ecosystem through agreements, and the only some of the loopholes or some of the missing ones are the agreements within standard harmonization, open raw material trade agreements, and definitions of green and low carbon hydrogen. We believe if hydrogen is supposed to take up as a global clean energy vector, there's a dire need of defining what green hydrogen is or what low carbon hydrogen is, and hopefully these bilateral agreements further tap into these aspects as well, so that the global nature of hydrogen can be unleashed. In terms of commitments with respect to public funding, Germany currently leads the public investment committed for hydrogen deployment at $9.2 billion as part of their COVID recovery plan. Alongside that, there's France, Japan, and EU who have also committed a substantial amount of funding from the government treasury for hydrogen deployment. Most of the areas where this public investments are committed is across developing production facilities, industrial clusters, hydrogen hubs, refueling and pipeline infrastructure, which are the nuts and bolts of developing a global hydrogen ecosystem. Although given the magnitude of investment that might be required to develop an ecosystem from scratch, we believe that alongside these public investments, private investments will play a critical role in developing the hydrogen market, and believe that an appropriate public-private partnership risk sharing models and public-private consortiums of projects being built together will be extremely critical to draw in public and private investments. So the key takeaways for further discussions are the color conundrum within the hydrogen ecosystem is hindering the investments both from public and private entities at this point. There is a strong need for standardized definition of green, clean, and low carbon hydrogen, and we hope to find some even ground on this with the panel discussion up ahead. There is lack of clarity on demand creation frameworks and mechanisms. Although there are a lot of countries focusing on the supply bit and research and development and electrolyzer manufacturing as of date, there's lack of demand creation frameworks and mechanisms in many countries, hindering deployment of hydrogen across sectors. There is legislative commitments are kind of missing to the strategic commitments made, making just the strategy stay on the paper and not coming on the ground, which will have to change as quickly as possible with upcoming strategies. There is global harmonization required for regulation standards and safety norms to ensure the global tradability of hydrogen is tapped upon in the coming decade. And there should be policy and regulatory support to develop resilient supply chain for manufacturing, especially for electrolyzers and key components required across the hydrogen value chain. So that's it from us. Thank you very much. And I transfer over to Pawan to take the panel discussion ahead. Thank you.
Before that, I have one question on your slides. Sorry to interrupt you. You have one slide on the import and export where you have basically shown that India is only self-reliant. So what is the source of your data? Because India is focusing more on the export side. And you said that entire Europe is going to be a net exporter, because I don't know whether you have gone through the demand of the Europe and their self-sufficiency. So this slide, we wanted to understand about the data source and what is projection.
Right. We believe that India will have its own sort of cross-sectoral demand, and it's not really an export-oriented strategy that we might be expecting of India. So that's why we have put it in a self-reliant bucket. Obviously, countries like Australia and Chile have a very, very specific export-oriented strategy in work. So that's why they have been kept in the net export zone. Obviously, the demand for green hydrogen at this point is unpredictable, even in Indian scenario. So self-reliant would be something we thought would be appropriate for India at this point of time.
But the policy that Aminari is referring, this is basically focusing more on the export side. So domestic consumption is there, but the export is also considered for the demand. Second, there is light on the sectoral strategy where you are not putting India for the sectoral strategy, especially for the iron steel and the other things. So why you left India? You can just go to slide. I hope it's a fourth slide. Where you shown the.
So Manoj, if you don't mind, Manoj.
Sorry, sir. This was two difference that I wanted to indicate because
sure.
We are preparing this thing.
No, we are aware. No, Manoj. In fact, we are working with MNRE on the mission, so I'm extremely aware of the mission. What's happening?
These are the two deficiencies because we have also the interest of guests to see that because these are the Indian policy that we should not misinterpret.
No, absolutely. I think your point is well noted. Let's get started with the panel discussion, and I think. Let's make note of that soon. So, very good afternoon for this interesting discussion. I think we'll be hearing across geographies right now. I'll start with actually Bart. But thank you for joining us today here. And I just wanted to jump into the questions of, what actually has been the key driver, two-part questions. One is, what has been the key driver for formulation of an hydrogen strategy in the European Union itself? And secondly is that what do you see are, how important are public-private partnerships in developing this nascent hydrogen ecosystem? Because we hear a lot of projects being developed in EU. So just want to get your perspective on those two aspects. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and also thanks for having me and being able to explain a little bit the European strategy. Well, to answer your two questions, I mean, why Europe made a hydrogen strategy, I think it can be answered pretty straightforward. I mean, it's the climate. I mean, we have to decarbonize, and hydrogen will be part of it. I mean, we estimate that by 2050, the total energy demand in Europe, 20% of that will be probably supplied through hydrogen. Okay, there are some people saying 25%, some people say 15%. I mean, who knows in 2050 where it will be, but let's say that almost a fifth to a quarter probably of the energy demand in 2050 in Europe will be supplied through hydrogen. So yeah, we needed to start working towards that goal. We believe that there was a lot of technology available in Europe to help them, so we needed to scale up those technology. There's an opportunity to create jobs. I mean, we estimated that we can create more than 5 million jobs in Europe related to hydrogen. So also it will help our GDP growth as well. So there's a lot of reasons why hydrogen was actually important for Europe and why we made a strategy. So the importance of your second question, the importance of the PPP, the public-private partnership, like we are. Well, I think since we are in a hurry, we really need to address the climate issue. we need to quickly develop the technology that is necessary. When I look back, I mean, we started in 2008 with the public-private partnership. At that time, of course, the climate debate was not yet so high, but there was some kind of technology, but everything was spread in Europe. I mean, everybody was doing a little bit on his own something. So that's why the partnership kind of brought all those different players together under one umbrella and discuss together and make a kind of roadmap together. And I think that was very important because if everybody is doing something and nobody is controlling, I mean, you're losing a lot of money. So we wanted to make sure that the money that we put had the biggest impact and make the biggest difference. And so that's why we set up this public-private partnership to agree with governments. Okay, what do we need to do? What is the industry asking? What are the researchers can do or cannot do? So in order to align all those strategies, and so we made a strategic research and innovation agenda all together. So, and we're following that agenda with very clear KPIs to achieve by when. And then also this is a good opportunity for the industry to ask to the, in our case, the Commission, which is a part of the partnership, to ask for the right policies and the right standards and the right instruments. But also we need to be careful because it's all about the right timing. I mean, we should not make a policy or a regulation too early and also not too late. And by going into discussion with the industry and the researchers, it's very, it's a good opportunity to tune the right timing to make a certain regulation. So that's the importance of a partnership. And I can tell you that I believe that the partnership in Europe was very successful considering where we are today. I mean, if you see that, I mean, on the electrolyzers, how we push this technology today, we're building multi-megawatt electrolyzers by a lot of European companies in Europe. We are building now also the fuel cell trucks and so on. So I think I mean, the partnership has been proven very successful. And I would only recommend many other countries to do a similar kind of partnership, I would say.
Any of the one or two partnerships that you would like to quickly highlight before I move to next panelist?
Sorry?
Any key partnerships you would like to highlight that have been very successful that you think in the last couple of years?
I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, as I said, I was explaining a little bit our partnership, of course, the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. I can also talk a bit about, I'll give you a few examples of business-to-business partnerships, because that's another partnership. So you see in Europe two types of partnerships. I mean, you have the big ones, the big energy companies and big transportation companies that before they didn't work together, and now suddenly they have to work together, and they are doing it well. I mean, to give you an example, for example, in Paris, the Hype taxis, the hydrogen taxis by Hype, suddenly Air Liquide, which was just producing gas, and Toyota now formed a partnership in order to put hydrogen taxis in Paris. That was a very successful partnership. Today they have more than 100 taxis. They will go to 1,000 taxis in the future. So they are really working together because they both put skin in the game, which is important. So to avoid the chicken and egg discussion each time. So they will go together. They put money in one company together, and so they both want to be successful, of course. The second type of partnership is the SMEs with the big companies. So what we also see is that SMEs actually in the hydrogen sector were very crucial to develop the key technology. However, those SMEs, they don't have the financial capacity to scale up. And so you see, for example, Shell, in our case, they bought small companies or acquire or invest in small companies. They buy actually the technology, and then they bring it to the market much faster and scale it up. So we really see this kind of, let's say, two types of partnerships. I mean, one other example of an SME and a big company is, for example, Linde with ITM. ITM was an electrolyzer company, and Linde, okay, it's a big gas company, so Linde invested in ITM. And these are the kind of partnerships we see happening in order to speed up things.
Excellent, but thank you for highlighting those partnerships, business to business, and also, of course, we do understand the public-private partnerships. Let me bring Fiona here. I mean, good to see you again. We had spoken to learn about the Australia's Hydrogen Council, and I posed the same question: that what have been the driving factors right now for the key driving factors for setting up this whole hydrogen mission in Australia. And also would like to understand that the Hydrogen Council, the way it functions in Australia, is a body of all private partners, all government partners and stakeholders. And you have been driving these quarterly discussions and, of course, on a regular basis to really ensure that many projects and also build relationships with other countries. If you could really please share some of the successes, some of your own learnings, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me properly? Is that all working all right? Oh, good. All right, well, thank you. I think the why hydrogen piece for Australia has changed a little bit, because our hydrogen strategy came out at the end of 2019. And while the initial reasons for it are still stand, I think that we can be more explicit now about other reasons that weren't maybe made as clear in 2019, and also other things that have then emerged more obviously. So the hydrogen strategy that came out in 2019 was about decarbonisation, but by and large, it was the export potential. It was about seeking to understand the scale of other countries and their desire to adopt hydrogen as a means of decarbonising, and understanding just how big Australia's opportunity might be in producing hydrogen and exporting it, at least within our region. And it wasn't really a climate change focused document. That was a reflection of our government at the time. It was about the economic benefits, and that's sort of how people saw it. Now, whilst it was about export, there was a strong argument in there, or a strong assumption that we needed to not only make it, but use it domestically in order to get to scale to provide for that export market. So that was the sort of the underpinning logic of it. Certainly, those reasons for Australia taking it so seriously still stand, but I think we can be more explicit now about climate change and our desire to prevent it, to respond to it, to be responsible. We've had a change in government and a change in appetite to have those conversations. But also, we're really seeing hydrogen playing a stronger role within a broader national security context, and particularly in our region, it's something which has been coming up in Quad discussions. So very much part of how we think about energy and energy which cannot be weaponized and used against us, because we've seen that experience of Russia and Ukraine. So certainly we're seeing sort of multiple pieces coming into play here that make a mature and planned approach to hydrogen all the more important. But obviously hydrogen is still within a broader net zero context, and that's something which we still, I think, probably a little bit behind on in Australia, but certainly seeking to make up for lost time in developing a clearer approach to what getting to net zero means, and pulling all the levers we can, including what we need to do on hydrogen. In terms of the question about AHC, so yes, we're an industry body. We've got 103 members at the moment. They are spread across private sector organisations, small and large, multinational, domestic, and across all of the sectors where people are potentially interested in hydrogen. So it's interesting because we're an industry association for an industry that does not yet exist. It's still emerging. So there's a wide range of I think belief and enthusiasm within our membership as they look at different opportunities and have different views on the colour conundrum, for example, as well as other things. So it's a very broad church. That there isn't something which I think we can say we don't have consensus on details, but we as the Secretariat act in a sort of thought leadership, think tank type way. We are engaging with governments all the time. We are working to develop the policy that then brings the industry into being commercial, because without some version of carbon pricing, without some way of people being able to value the investments in alternative fuels, it's pretty hard to see how we're going to get to scale. So we're there trying to talk about how to close that economic gap, as well as really addressing the key issues around regulatory requirements across the making, the transporting and the using across multiple sectors. And in Australia, because we are positioning ourselves to be a regional leader in renewable electricity, we have quite a way to go in dealing with communities because of the need to build so much. So there's a big piece there around social license to operate within communities, as well as how we talk to future consumers of hydrogen about what it is they might be consuming. So the AHC is engaged in all of the issues within those very broad spheres of interest. You referred to our quarterly meetings. Yes, we do bring people together and let people know what we're up to every quarter. We have a portal we give everyone that we meet who is everyone who's a member, and anyone who could not be a member because they're not a business but just an interested party, we give them access to our portal. And we're really out there trying to share the information and be as transparent as possible, because whilst we all talk a good game about collaboration and we are pre-commercial, it is still pretty hard to get people to tell you what they're up to in this space, because they're trying to find that way, to get the jump on others, which, is good. That's the competitive tension that that will get things going. But it does make it that bit harder if you're trying to get that foundation in place and bring in everyone's understanding in order to get to those foundational issues being resolved fast. But I'll stop there. I hope that covers the nature of your question.
Yeah. No, very helpful and very interesting to hear also that doing things it's almost like preparing, right, for an industry which doesn't exist yet, but all the conversations is happening around that. I just wanted to quickly bring in Manoj. Manoj, you have been, the advisor to this mission of hydrogen in India, and through the Government of India's policy think tank, have been, talking about how hydrogen can play a cross-vectorial tool, literally, in terms of decarbonizing across multiple sectors, right? So two strong questions for you. One is, given Honorable Prime Minister's commitment at COP26 and at various other platforms on India's RE target, and also the focus in India being exclusively on green hydrogen, I quickly wanted to hear your thoughts, which you were earlier reflecting also on. Where does India sit in all these conversations, and how is India positioning itself in the hydrogen economy? Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Thank you, WRI, and rightly said that India is focusing on the green hydrogen side, not going to the gray to transition from gray to green, because we are net importer of the gray acidity form of ammonia. And right now we have not developed the coal gasification technology, though the budget for pilot project was announced, but it has to take a long journey to complete in a commercial way. And then putting gray hydrogen through coal gasification or through LNG cracking, and then putting the CCS technology on that. So the commercial for achieving the $1 per kg to this transition and then directly going through the green hydrogen is much easier, because we have already achieved optimum price of the renewable energy in India, and because of our 500 gigawatt target by 2030, we are going to achieve much lower cost in the renewable energy, especially solar. So the transition from gray to green, maybe for India, may take longer time and more economical. So that's why India is specifically focusing on the green hydrogen through solar and wind and all renewable sources. Now coming out to the twin approach for green hydrogen strategy for India, we have not still experienced the manufacturing growth in India that we wanted, and India is not experiencing the double-digit growth, and we are hoping that we'll achieve this one. And right now we're using 18% of electricity in our entire economy, and that can be 30% by 2030 if we go and we electrify all our means. Still, we will be importing 70% of our energy, and we are going to be dependent on the import side. So how to reduce our import and how to decarbonize our industrial sector, which are hard-to-abate sectors. So the green hydrogen is going to play a very big role to decarbonize this sector, especially the transport sector, the industry sector in steel, refining, and fertilizers. And then we have 500 gigawatt target, and if we wanted to put every solar and wind project on the grid, then definitely we are going to experience the duck curve that California is already witnessing. So for that, we have to also balance out, and we have to take some power from grid to produce green hydrogen or something else. So these are some nitty-gritty. That's why the green hydrogen is going to be most suitable area, and we are focusing on the green hydrogen. Right now, India has not announced the policy for green hydrogen because our policy is still not approved by cabinet. But definitely I can say, because NITI supported MNRE, and we have worked on the 5 principles, because we are discussing about the scale and demand. That Soham said that we don't know how demand will come, from where demand will come, and what demand will come. So definitely there is a chicken and egg story about the demand and supply. So who is going to take, which sector is going to take green hydrogen first? Because there is a cost comparison. Today, gray hydrogen is much cheaper than the green hydrogen. And how to penetrate this green hydrogen and replacing by gray hydrogen. So we have worked upon the setting a target, that we wanted to give a target. In the policy, we have come out with target by analyzing the domestic consumption of gray hydrogen, and we wanted to replace 100% gray hydrogen by 2030. But the economics is not working that way, so we have basically put timeline by 2035. Though 100% gray hydrogen may not be replaced, but definitely 80% gray hydrogen will be replaced in our economy. So the first thing is the visionary target that we wanted to put, and policy is going to announce some target. Then the power cost, because we know the 70% electricity cost is the input cost for the green hydrogen production. So we wanted to work on that one, and already Ministry of Power announced the green hydrogen policy, phase 1, in which they have come out with a lot of clarifications on open access and banking policy. So enabling the low cost power is a challenge, and this is the one pillar that we are working, and the policy will take care. Then coming out to that, we have to focus on sunrise sector, which can create demand. So right now we know that refinery and fertilizer may be the low-hanging fruit, but we have to also work upon the new sunrise sector, and which is going to have a huge demand, and that can provide a scale. The steel would be one sector, and the policy is basically coming up with a lot of pilot projects on the transportation and steel side. So through that pilot project in R&D, we are going to develop some demand and some new sunrise sector. And definitely, we have basically facing that import issue, and we wanted to reduce import. But in solar sector, we still dependent upon the solar cell from China. So we are focusing more on the domestic manufacturing of the component, especially the electrolyzer manufacturing. So this is our 4th pillar, which we are going to take care of that. At least whatever our domestic requirement we can produce initially, and we can manufacture inside the country. And definitely what I was arguing with the Swam, that if India wanted to achieve the scale and size and the economy in the green hydrogen, the domestic sector is not going to provide initiative, because of some policy issue. India has shifted its transport sector from vessel norms 4 to 6 right now, and transport industry is not ready to take this thing. And refinery already invested to take care of this safe. So initially, maybe if you wanted to push even and give the green hydrogen consumption obligation, though these industry they are not going to consume a lot of green hydrogen because they have already invested in the assembly lines. So initial focus from NITI side, that we recommended that export maybe our initial focus, that is going to give us a big boost, both to achieve the scale and size and to achieve the economy. that is basically priority in the gray hydrogen and hydrogen. And we have come out with one small exercise in meeting on the tech side that whether NITI is going to put GST at what, Ministry of Finance is going to put GST at what size and what scale. So we come out that if we consume 60% green hydrogen, we replace 60% of gray hydrogen, then when we become a net zero in our import and our tax balancing. And we wanted to put a GST of 18% equivalent to what oil and gas today's taxes, then it will go something 80% and beyond that. So this is the some strategy that we are basically implementing, and that our policy will be going to take care of all these things. Coming out the agreements and the collaborations that India wanted, and India wanted to make success of green hydrogen. Definitely, the bilateral and the multilateral relations is required, because this requires huge low-cost investment, and we are focusing more on bilateral side. And India and France, they agreed, and India Denmark is talking about some agreement. Though India has not moved more bilateral agreement right now because policies are not out. But we are focusing because the Japan and South Korea, which is going to be net importer of green hydrogen. So for us, they are our likely partner. And we can also see the Europe, some country in Europe that they can easily import from India, because for them, producing green hydrogen may be actually a task. So there are some of B2B and G2B agreement that we are focusing and thinking. And coming out to that, the biggest challenge and question about making green hydrogen as a global acceptance, because right now the EU policy that they wanted 1 hour banking norms, and India is 4 hour banking norms. So there are geographical regions and ecosystems where you cannot compare everything by comparing the one country to other country. So we have to establish and we have to accept a global standard, which I hope the international organization, maybe Green Hydrogen Organization and here India Hydrogen Organization, maybe can work together. NITI is also facilitating, and MNRE also coming out with the standard and leveling process for green hydrogen. So this is one of the biggest challenges right now, that how to make green hydrogen more acceptable in all markets, if you wanted to export it, if you wanted to adopt it. And initial period, India is not going to import any green hydrogen. So we are importing ammonia. Maybe because policy is not going to allow the import of green hydrogen or import of even domestic import of electrolyzer. But yes, initial period, maybe 18 to 20 months, we can allow some electrolyzer import. But yes, we are not going to import. We are going to become self-sufficient, and we are going to export definitely, that our policies is focusing on. This is right now the story from our side. If you have any question, I can answer.
Thank you, Manoj. I think highlighting the pillars in depth. I'll come back with my second round of questions. Let me now move to Karen. Karen, thank you for joining us from Norway with Greenstat. I know they've been working with Greenstat very closely.
Yes.
Couple of questions I had for you was, I was also recently in Norway, and it was fascinating to see, it's almost like the hydrogen value chain is being developed across the entire country. I mean, it looks like a very focused sector in Norway right now. My specific questions to you are that how has been this strategy thought through in Norway? Because it's not like conceived just as 1 or 2 projects, but it is basically a very public funding supported strategy for R&D across the entire hydrogen and fuel value chain. So what outcome do you see from this fast commercialization? And secondly, what have been some of the specific policy instruments that have been introduced to really make this happen in Norway? So what has been Norway's strategy from both supply and demand perspective?
Okay, so thank you so much. And the next time you're in Norway, make sure that you contact me. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to speak. And thank you to the previous speakers. It's nice to hear from the European Union, of course, which is the closest market to Norway. Just to let you all know that Norway is not formally part of the European Union, but we are closely associated with the European Union through economic agreements. So let me just start by saying that whatever happens in the EU is of great relevance for Norway, and often it's kind of coordinated when strategies and laws and regulations are being developed. The Norwegian hydrogen strategy was presented by the government in 2020, and just want to also say that it's considered to be quite weak from an industrial point of view. And one of the main reasons for that is that it lacks concrete targets of production. So, but it was kind of, from the government side, it was said that it was a starting point, and it needed to kind of be filled with concrete content, and we are still there. But you're very right, Pawan. It's a strong focus on R&D in the strategy, and I think that it makes a big difference. That it's also what Bart was saying, that the R&D part is extremely important. It's also it's important, of course, for many reasons. I mean, we still the green hydrogen field, or the hydrogen field, still lacks relevant R&D on technology, and also throughout the value chain on market penetration, etc. But it can also be kind of a way of slowing down the really ready projects, so the projects that are close to industrialization. But can you repeat the question again, because I was just by the R&D part, Pavan?
I was also asking about what kind of policies have been deployed in Norway. Specifically, have there been incentives?
Yes. Mm. So there are some really targeted funding instruments, and one, the name is not so important, but it's called Enova, and it's owned by the Ministry of Climate and Environment. And the mandate for this funding instrument is to shift towards more environmentally friendly energy in both consumption and production. And recently, and I think that's what you are referring to in your question, Pawan. Recently, they handed out quite a lot of money to 5 concrete hydrogen projects in Norway, and that was kind of it was a game changer for the Norwegian hydrogen industry, because it's now actually happening. So these five locations throughout the coast of Norway is all linked to maritime. The maritime market. So the funding instrument both targeted the setup of concrete hydrogen production facilities, but it teamed it with also funding ship construction. So you actually kind of linked the production to the market through this funding instrument. And I think from an industrial point of view, it's extremely important that we are now actually moving towards a full kind of market implementation in one of the most important markets for Norway, which is the maritime sector. So there's no doubt that it's still as the previous speaker also said, we still need to kind of fund. We need to take the risk down from the industry to start building this industry, and this funding instrument is doing exactly that now. So that was it was a big happening in Norway just so just before the summer in June. This was announced, and I'm also happy to say that Green Start is part of 3 of the 5 big projects. So for us as a company as well, it's a game changer, because it's kind of, we move from plans and PowerPoints to actually production and market penetration, which is good. So I can come back with more, but I can also, you let me know.
I just have a quick follow-up question also, that 2 questions is, what is any choice of colors that Norway is focusing on? And also, are we talking about only exports, or is it meeting for imports, or is it about managing the local demand? So where is the focus? I could a little bit highlight Norway's priorities also.
I can do it. Yeah, I can do that. So as you probably know, Norway is an oil and gas country. So of obvious reasons, the blue hydrogen is important for Norway and is believed to have a huge export potential. So the traditional oil and gas companies is advocating quite strongly for the production of blue hydrogen. From the Greenstar point of view, we are only dealing with green hydrogen, and green hydrogen also has a long industrial history in Norway, which produced green hydrogen for over 100 years. And the reason for that is, of course, our access to renewable power. We have a lot of hydropower in Norway. So in that sense, we have a so-called green grid. So it makes sense for Norway to produce green hydrogen. In the strategy, there is no mentioning of import of any kind. So Norway is kind of setting out to be an exporter of hydrogen in both blue and green. That was the first question, Pawan. The second question was...
No, I think you answered both. Was
okay.
also the import end versus export and then the color also. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you so much. I'll come back in my second round.
Sure.
Moving on to Japan right now. I wanted to ask Mr. Ohira. Japan was one of the first countries, as you know, to come up with a national strategy around hydrogen. And given the limited RE potential, how crucial do you see imports to meet Japan's hydrogen demand? And how would it really secure such imports in an economical manner? I think we also had this question from one of our transport secretaries of Kerala on YouTube, who posed this question specifically to Japan on what kind of contract prices are there with Japan. And of course, my question also remains around the color. If Japan is focusing around pink color also, we have different shades of hydrogen. So just wanted to hear your thoughts around these three aspects. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, and your question. I'm very happy to join this kind of important workshop. Well, let me start about the kind of the history about the strategies. And yeah, I mentioned that we have developed the national strategy in 2017. But we had 3 years ago, the Japan Ministry of Trade and Industry developed a hydrogen roadmap in the year of 2014. Yes, it's still in the Ministry of Economy leading this area, but it's not enough. We must involve the other ministry, like Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Transportation. That's why we need kind of the unite national roadmap, so national strategy. So our Prime Minister, Mr. Shinzo Abe, unfortunately, he was assassinated. And he took a great leadership to develop the national roadmap in 2017. It's, I believe that it's first one. Well, and I cannot find any benefit or at some point. But and after unveiled our roadmap, I suppose the world will pay attention to Japan's hydrogen activity. And some many countries and also you will be invited to participate and in international activity. I think there is a very big benefit because to spreading out hydrogen in international cooperation is quite important, especially rule making like a regulation code understanding. If we depend outside and this kind of activity, then yeah, we have to be behind in the international market. So I mean, and keeping the how can I say? Well, keeping the presence of the quite important for us. And also, I suppose our strategy has to inspire the other countries to formulate the hydrogen strategy. Well, the participation, as mentioned, the participation of many countries essential to expanding use of hydrogen. From point of view, I suppose our strategy is quite meaningful. In addition, and the strategy, the formulation process is quite important. How to involve the stakeholder industry side in chemical, the steel making, and transportation, and the utilities. So also the stakeholders from the academia and the local government. And how to set the ambitious but achievable goals. I believe this kind of know-how can be transferred to the emerging countries working on hydrogen in the future. So still, this activity is still in the kind of the keeping our presence. I mean, and yes, we developed our strategy 5 years ago, and we have the 5 years experiences. So that's a good, huge asset for us. Well, and as a second question, hydrogen transportation on the color of the hydrogen. Let me talk about the color of the hydrogen. And formerly, we Japan do not concerned about our color of the hydrogen. And a blue or green, sometimes pink, it will be fine. The issue, our concern is cost and also the carbon intensity of the hydrogen. Industry gas, I know we may, yes, we to plan to import the hydrogen, but we not decided which color of the hydrogen. Also, you mentioned to nuclear. Yes, nuclear inside Japan is quite sensitive issue, but our current prime minister to declare that Japan leads that to several nuclear in the end of this year. And toward the 2030 and the 2050, with a nuclear power, Japan to provide in the low carbon or zero emission power inside Japan. If I use if we produce the hydrogen inside Japan with our current electricity, it means and it's automatically zero emission and hydrogen. But we cannot identify it in the color because our power is very big mixture in nuclear, the renewable, and fossil fuels, etc. Well, and hydrogen import. We promise. We started the import hydrogen from the 2030. It's combined with hydrogen gas turbine, the hydrogen power generation. And we only have the 8 years. It's quite very short term. We already to announce that the huge investment to develop the hydrogen supply chain in the 30 billion Japanese yen, and to develop the international supply chain with a liquefied hydrogen or organic chemical hydrogen. Well, we are now conducting the feasibility study in which hydrogen source, which country should be suitable in a fast hydrogen supply chain in the 2020 study. But unfortunately, it's not unveiled and finished yet. We may unveil our plan early next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rohira. Just quick follow-up question. We do also understand that the focus on Japan around hydrogen has been more on the mobility applications. We also understand that there have been some arrangements with Australia to create this whole shipping between Australia and Japan also. Do you want to touch upon any specific area that why mobility has seen a whole lot of application in Japan than other sectors?
No, it's a kind of the history, and we started to hydrogen fuel cell program from the 1980. We have the 40 years experience, and we take the step-by-step approach. And our first step is develop the stationary fuel cell using the natural gas in the context of the energy conservation. Our second step is the fuel cell vehicle with a hydrogen filling station. The hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is the first application to use the hydrogen itself. And it means we need to not only the hydrogen infrastructure, hardware, meaning the hydrogen filling station, hydrogen supply chain. Also, now we need to develop the hydrogen infrastructure, including regulation and the code, understand how to use the hydrogen with the safety inside Japan. And the stationary fuel cell and fuel cell vehicle is already commercialized in Japan. So you understand the Japan leading the Japan focusing on the hydrogen and the mobility. But this is the second step. We try to expand. The next step is we try to expand the hydrogen demand and to more large scale. And yes, there are many approaches, and not only Japan, outside Japan. But we are focusing on the hydrogen power generation. And from this 2020, so I think we will collaborate with the heavy industry company or a power company. They also Japan to announce the hydrogen and ammonia power generation at 1% of the electricity mix in 2030. Again, currently we have the commercialized, we already have the commercialized fuel cells, fuel cell vehicles. But this is in term point, a step-by-step approaches. We try to expand it other area. First one is the power generation, and the next step is hydrogen using in industry uses, industry the feedstock and thermal energy or etc.
Thank you so much for explaining the sequence of why Japan's focus has been, and also laying your future vision. Thank you. Bart, let me get back to you in the conversation on this. I just wanted to understand, how has the recent conflict accelerated the ambition of EU to accelerate its strategy in hydrogen, because the natural gas prices have been on rise, and is hydrogen one of the sectors that we see that will see a faster adoption, or the whole ecosystem around that evolving? That's one question I have for you. And also I wanted to understand that we do also see that how is EU planning to establish partner countries for the proposed import of 10 metric million tons of hydrogen by 2030. I think that's a very ambitious target to really import as well. So if you could touch upon these two aspects, that would be great.
Absolutely, with pleasure. So, the first question regarding the war in Ukraine, I mean, I can be very clear. Yes, it has changed the plans and the ambitions of Europe related to hydrogen dramatically. I mean, the European Commission has announced on the 18th of May their plan on how to get rid of the Russian gas. And so my target, because that's how I see it somehow, or the target that we need to achieve here is now 20 million tons of green or renewable hydrogen by 2030. We need to produce that. This is gigantic, and this goes far beyond the 40 gigawatt of the electrolyzer target that was put in 2020. So I think now we talk easily about 150 to 200 gigawatt of electrolyzers to reach there. So that's completely a different dimension that we are now talking in. Of course, from this 20 million tons, we will produce domestically, locally 10 million tons, and another 10 million tons will be imported. And I will come to your I will reply on your question, the second question, a bit later. But first, I would like also to say that the impact was not only in terms of the ambitions, because with 20 million ton, we foresee to replace around 50 million cubic meters of natural gas coming from Russia. That's the idea. So that's quite a lot, I can tell you. So we are working very hard on that. That's also why there is now this electrolyzer alliance that has been put forward. We have also a clear target from those electrolyzer alliances to produce at least 17 gigawatt of electrolyzers by 2024, 2025, something. So they make some kind of pledge. So we will see how that evolves. But that was important changes. Second important changes is, of course, the color of hydrogen. I mean, the prices of natural gas went up a lot. So I don't know if these prices will be maintained in the future. I mean, we will see what will happen, of course. But today, the case for blue hydrogen, for example, becomes less favorable. And it's very clear that the focus, I think, at least on a short term or in the coming year, will be mainly on the green hydrogen. That's also why the action plan of the Commission in May was talking about 20 million tons of green hydrogen. We call it renewable. And blue hydrogen was not really mentioned. It doesn't mean that Europe is not will not accept the blue hydrogen. That's something else. I mean, yes, if blue hydrogen will be there, it will be accepted. I only think that on a short term, probably the business case is not so favorable today. And so probably the focus will be more on the renewable, and I think we will see more projects coming into renewable. On your second question regarding, partner countries, I mean, I think the Commission was pretty clear also in their strategy that partner countries they are looking to two areas mainly. One is Africa. Why Africa? Because there is already some natural gas pipelines going to Africa between Spain and Morocco, for example, or Tunisia or Algeria and Italy. We have ones, and probably a new one might be built probably somewhere from Egypt or whatever. So there are still some discussions, but definitely Africa is one of the key continents where we are looking at. Second one is, of course, neighboring countries. I mean, no doubt Ukraine will still play a very important role for us. It was already mentioned in 2020. And we see also hydrogen one of the, let's say, recoveries after the war. Once the war is over, we believe that Ukraine could be one of the areas or business areas to, let's say, where they can start their economy again, and is mainly on hydrogen. And when we have the pipelines between Ukraine and Europe is already there. We have one to Slovakia, we have also to Romania, and so there are a lot of pipelines there. So let's change them and let's put hydrogen in there. I mean, there are already two big projects in Ukraine that we are now investigating. And so they will, I mean, I can tell you they will play an important role. And so,
how about
other countries?
Southeast Asia?
What?
No, how about you talked about Northern Africa and what's happening in the EU, but what about the partner countries in Southeast Asia and South Asia?
Well, I think that I mean, of course, I mean, you know that Germany has, of course, also signed partner contract, because I'm now talking from the European Union point of view. Of course, if you look to separate countries, like for member states, like for example Germany, they have deals with Australia, for example. You mentioned them in your slide, or they were mentioned in the previous slides. I mean, also Belgium, for example, has with Namibia, with Oman, with Australia. So I think a lot of member states make their own kind of bilateral agreements with countries, which is all fine. Again, 10 million tons of hydrogen to be imported is gigantic. I mean, it's really a lot. And so we will need every nation that can supply and export green hydrogen to Europe. We will for sure make an agreement with. I just wanted to highlight just the main focusing point now from the Union, which is Africa and neighboring countries at this point in time. But each member state, of course, is free to sign up with whoever they want to do at this point in time.
Thank you, Batan. Very interesting to hear about the partnerships within Europe, Ukraine, and then, of course, with Africa, Morocco, Egypt also. Quite interesting to hear that. Fiona, let me bring you in. It looks like a great business opportunity for the Australian industry there to get ready with the 10 MMT plan for exports. I'm sure other countries are also looking forward. But I also had some questions on that. I've seen that Australia actually has strategies both centrally as well as states. Do you see that such strategies, which integrated strategies, of course, which are both at a national level and at a state level, do they pose really a barrier in adoption for project approvals and from an execution perspective? And we also do understand that Australia is targeting developing integrated hydrogen hubs. So how do you see these hubs act as, supply demand aggregation and also lead to helping commercial competitiveness? So just wanted to hear a little bit more in depth on the Australia's hydrogen strategy.
Sure, thank you. On the first question about the variety of strategies, yes, so we've got our national one from 2019, and pretty much I'd say 7 of the 8 remaining jurisdictions, our states and territories, have also got hydrogen strategies / action plans. Now, as far as I'm aware, none of these are at a level of detail that create a problem for projects going through, because either regulations are in place or not, permitting approaches are in place or not, and so the strategies that are talking about where governments would like to be in the future don't, I think, have any particular effect on people trying to do things in the here and now, in the sense of them having projects go through the processes. I do think that if one is to say there is an issue with having such an abundance of enthusiasm from all of these governments, I'd say it's the point where we become confusing to our trading partners and others. I was at the Rotterdam summit in May, and Australia was very well represented. There was quite a few Australians there, and as I looked at the overarching the slide pack, the slide at the back that had all the logos on it, half the logos at least appeared to be various governments of Australia. And I was just thinking, what does that look like? What does that look like to someone who's trying to understand Australia as Team Australia, as the one entity, and the claims that that people are making? It's too bad if the different states and territories are saying, yeah, Team Australia, but we're the best. Don't deal with the others. And that's something which it's always the challenge when you're looking at a federation. But yeah, I think the strategies are themselves not really contradicting one another. I mean, to be honest, most of them are pretty high level. They are aspirational statements about things that, for most part, people are reasonably self-evident, or are contested enough that it's relevant to keep talking about them. So people are using the same kinds of use cases and views on opportunities around mobility, around gas blending, around industrial use, and so that's kind of how that works. So yes, I think Team Australia we could probably do a bit more, and I know that's something which Austrade, trade and investment folk, take very seriously, and we're very happy to work with them on that. I don't think the strategies are confusing, but possibly the way they are implemented could be a challenge. But there's only so much you can do to coordinate activity across jurisdictions that have their own economic requirements. On the hubs, so yes, there was a federal hubs program that was announced last year. The process, they went through the process of picking some sites and seeking expressions of interest and picking some sites at the end of last year through the beginning of this year. The idea was there'd be about 7 of these hubs. The hubs, it's worth about $464 million Australian, for about 7 hubs, 70 million or so each. And it got very much caught up in the election that we went on to have a couple of months ago, where the announcements about those hubs were made in the days immediately before the election, and a few extra hubs were added by the then government, which were pre-election commitments. So we've had a new government come in and quite honestly been confronted with a number of energy crises from day one, which they've been dealing with. I think that, so we haven't seen a confirmation or a recommitment of the new government to the previous government's hubs program. None of us are thinking that there won't be such a thing, like we're assuming it will go ahead. But it does mean that we're still kind of in this early period of waiting to see exactly what those hubs will look like. We have, the announcements are out there. If anyone is interested, you can actually see all the Australian projects that have been announced, including the hubs, on a website called High Resource. It's HY Resource, and that's through our Commonwealth Scientific organisation, CSIRO. So you can actually read all the information there if people are interested. I think hubs are a very good way of testing on the ground how things could work. And basically, though, they're not the sort of enormous scale hubs that we've seen announced in the US at $70 million or so each. That's not going to put an enormous sort of dent in the bucket of money that would need to go into a hub. But, you know, we have high hopes for them being able to bring parties together in the key parts of Australia. Oh, by the way, they've all got a strong export focus as well. They're all sort of located in regions which see themselves making quite a bit and using their ports to export. Thank you.
Thank you so much for explaining in detail about the 7 hubs and the plans. Manoj, if I can bring you in, based on what you've heard, 2 questions for you: that which sectors do you see that green hydrogen would be, or clean hydrogen will be adopted in India, and why? And also, just curious, how would India identify partners for hydrogen trading and establish a domestic manufacturing capability? Anything that you want to pick up?
Yeah. I hope I'm audible right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as per policy, and we are basically tapping right now the fertilizer and refinery sector, because they are the biggest consumer right now of the grey hydrogen. So our strategy is basically roaming around that. We wanted to replace the grey hydrogen consumption right now, our ammonia consumption, which we are basically importing. And we see that right now we have 5.2 million ton of demand in this sector, and that is going to be 11.7 million ton by 2030. So we wanted to replace all this grey hydrogen with green hydrogen, and we can move forward from these 2 sectors to the transport sector and heavy trucking and long distance vehicles, and then we can go for the steel sector, because steel, India is the 2nd largest producer of the steel, and India wanted to basically decarbonize the entire sector. So the steel is the next target for us. So this is the strategy for us to move from one sector to another sector. Power sector would be the last sector where we are going to use this hydrogen as our energy storage. Because right now the cost for the energy storage to green hydrogen is not very economical for us. So this is the strategy for us. On second question, because I was just getting a call from my boss, so the second question I just miss out. Second question, can you just please?
The second question was on this whole partnerships for trade, and how would we establish a domestic manufacturing capability?
Yeah, so right now the policy is basically coming out with the PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme. Production linked incentive scheme, and in that they are focusing on some targets by 2030, and they're providing incentive per kilowatt hour for that one. So this is one area where the ecosystem of the domestic manufacturing is to build. And definitely in that, the technology transfer and the technology collaboration is required, because we don't have a lot of IPR of the electrolyzers. So like L&T and the Renewable Power, they have gone for agreement, and a lot of other companies, they are basically searching the new partners. First challenge is like there are 4 or 5 companies which is basically commercially producing the electrolyzer, and right now they are not seeing India as a future for them, because their entire production capacity is for 5 to 6 years and right now. So India is trying to have a collaboration with this technical institute and the company. So the policy itself is going to have a R&D focused on the electrolyzer side as well. And there is a basically consortium of industry, academia, and practitioners. So that is one part. The entire ecosystem of the green hydrogen, eventually the technology collaboration, the funding collaborations, and all these things is not picking up because of the policy is not announced. And once the policy is announced, because the policies lay down entire procedure how to move when they have given the green hydrogen obligation, the PLI scheme, the incentive for the green hydrogen production, even the R&D side. So they kept a lot of fund for that R&D side, the pilot projects, and that eventually have also a fund for the capacity building of the manpower, those who are going to engage in the green hydrogen production. So we are waiting for the policy side, and though government of India and MEA, they are trying to understand the requirement of industry and all. They have called a meeting, discuss. I hope WRI also participated in that meeting. So we are basically approaching a lot of institutes, lot of countries for collaborations. But right now, these are on the pipelines. Nothing is very completely developed.
Thank you. I think the big weight is on the policy right now to be announced anytime. So looking forward to the national hydrogen mission from the government. Karen, let me bring you in here that we did talk about the global partnerships and joint R&D. Two things that I wanted to also touch upon is, do you see, one is around the bilateral partnerships through the as part of the Norwegian hydrogen strategy, and which countries is the international trade focusing on? And then secondly, also I was a little curious that do you see any future of blue hydrogen at all now, with all that has happened in the last 1-2 years?
Okay, so thank you so much. Can I first say just a little bit on an overarching level about cooperation, because Norway is a small country, and we do need cooperation and access. We need cooperation with and access to other markets in growing a new industry. And I would say that R&D cooperation always makes sense. But I guess in particularly now, when we are building a new industry and on the backdrop of a really serious global situation, where we have to speed up a green shift due to increasing global warming issues, and also the nature crisis that you, Fiona, briefly mentioned when it comes to also the land use for this new industry. So I guess that the world, or like the global society, we cannot afford to not share technology and competence. So cooperation is key, no matter what the national strategies say and where they point, in what direction they point us to. And again, I'll lean a little bit on you, Bart, because when it comes to bilateral agreements, and it's not clearly encouraged in the national hydrogen strategy for Norway, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And of course, it happens in different industries, and the countries that we are used to working with will also hold relevance in the hydrogen, the growing hydrogen market. Of course, we look to the European market, which is the closest market to us, and also we are very much linked with the energy systems. So for us, Germany is of course a very interesting market, but we are also lucky enough to work very closely with India, and that's not necessarily as a nation, but also as a nation. But now I'm taking the green stuff, the hat on. So we are extremely encouraged by the forward-leaning policies coming now from the Honorable Prime Minister in India, and of course India is a huge market for green hydrogen. So that's interesting for us. But cooperation happens both through the R&D partners and institutes, but also industry to industry. When it comes to the Ukraine conflict, I think also that I lean towards Bart's arguments that, of course, it's changing the everything for Europe. So we need to kind of move fast, but still move wisely in the direction of a green shift, because I guess that one of the most scary risks linked to, well, there are so many scary things about that situation, but it can also kind of make the green shift less green if we hurry up too fast. So that's kind of a worry that we need to look into, but of course it will change. And as you said, Bart, the prices of gas is increasing, and that will potentially push green hydrogen with the challenges and opportunities that brings with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question to Ohira, that um, we are very curious to understand which part of the value chain is Japan focusing on right now in the hydrogen value chain itself. Like, where is the focus?
Well, and actually, and all we are focusing on hydrogen production, hydrogen transportation, and also hydrogen utilization. And most of yes, so of the elements quite important. But I would like to say that hydrogen demand and developing hydrogen demand, hydrogen utilization are quite important. We need to believe a break and a chicken and egg and discussion. So in Japan case and the hydrogen power generation, it's just kind of breakthrough technologies to utilize to develop the hydrogen to market and to realizing the international hydrogen supply chain.
Thank you. Any last words from any of the panelists before I start thanking you all and wrap up this very interesting discussion for the last 90 minutes? I think it's always, how much ever we talk, it's less about hydrogen in the current context with all that's happening around. Any words? Anyone? Bart, Karen, Fiona, anyone wants to share anything quickly? Or Manoj? Any thoughts? Or a single liner?
So thank you, and this is a really wonderful discussion, and you well said that that as much we are talking that we are getting interested in the green hydrogen. So right now, just one liner that because every country decided that they wanted to go for the net zero by some year, by 2050, 2060, 2070, India 2070. And the entire globe is concerned about the climate change and the emissions. India is really concerned, and India has made its commitment in COP26. Right now, we have seen that our cabinet enhanced our NDC targets and all these things. So to combat this climate change and to achieve the net zero, the entire country, the entire globe basically they require to handhold each other, because some country they have technology, some country they have finance, and some country they have manpower. So we have to handhold each other, because then only we can help each other and we can decarbonize each other. Not a single country can decarbonize each other because it's a global world right now. So some are totally dependent upon the import of energy. Definitely they wanted to basically go for that totally domestic production, but because of the price, the technology and all these things, because the energy is basically a technology incentive, because technology moving very fast. So we have to handhold each other, we have to collaborate, and we have to basically go for the longer of agreements like R&D type of things, funding type of things, and to see that where we can help each other. So India is willing to cooperate and to have a partner with whosoever wanted to contribute in this ongoing initiative of the green hydrogen. And NITI itself is welcoming all the stakeholders. And we are in touch with almost every European countries, and we have received 21 ministers in the last 2-3 months, and MEA is taking care of this initiative. So we are basically progressing very fast, but everything is in pipeline. So right now I can't say here, but yes, we are welcoming every stakeholder, especially the technology side and the funding side to India, and we are ready to support to anyone in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen,
maybe
if
I can make a last comment, I think this challenge that we have for the climate is a global challenge, and I think we all will need to work globally together as soon as possible. And I believe every country will need hydrogen, be it in a bigger share or a lower share, but there is no country that will not be able to decarbonize without hydrogen. So we have to work all together very, very quickly. I say that hydrogen connects. That's what I always say. Hydrogen connects companies that never worked together. Now they work together. Hydrogen connects cultures that before were not working together. Now they connect. It connects countries together that were not connected before. So this is a beautiful. Hydrogen is really connect a lot of things together, and we have to work together. And if we can speed up, and if we can reduce the cost of hydrogen, and we can really make it a success, it will solve a lot of the SDGs, because I believe that within all the SDGs, energy is the key SDG, is the lack of upper SDG. If we can solve that nut, then there will be peace everywhere in the world. So we have a very important task here. Let's make hydrogen a reality.
Very well said, Bart. Karen?
No, I was just going to say that was very beautiful last words, I think. And I fully stand behind that.
Very nice. Fiona?
I'd have nothing to add. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was I will not be adding any value at this point. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Ohira, anything?
Yes, I agree to Bert, and the hydrogen connects everywhere. Hydrogen connects the world.
So on that wonderful high note of peace, of collaboration, of connection, I think want to thank you all. I think it's one of the panels across so many time zones, from Norway, from European Union, and from Japan, from India, and Australia. I think it's pretty much, we couldn't get our folks in the US because of the time zone, but I've been able to, we'll do another series around to with different countries. But thank you all for the wonderful questions. We have joined by more than 200 plus audience, not only on Zoom, but also because live telecast on YouTube, and many of the government stakeholders are also a part of this. So thank you, Fiona, Bart, Ohira, Karen, Manoj. Have a wonderful day. And thank you to the WRI team, Anandita, Soham, Jay, Anurag, for organizing this for everyone. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you, of course, to the great audience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.